Hello everybody, check this out. This is a 2022 Polestar 2, and this is the single motor Polestar 2 with one motor driving the front wheels instead of two motors driving both axles. Now that drops the price of this car by several $1,000s. So the starting price for this car is $47,200, and of course that is before all the incentives you get for owning an EV, federal and state discounts, all those types of things. Now this particular car is painted in a $1,200 paint called Thunder, and also has a plus pack, which is another $4 grand. So the price for this particular car before incentives is $52,400. You also get standard with this car 19-inch aluminum wheels right there. You can option it to have 20-inch wheels instead. Now you've got this general 5-door fastpack kind of look to it. It all looks very Volvo, and that's appropriate because this is a Volvo brand after all. And it's a shape that is got a lot of nice little clever details. These nice little carved in mini fender flares in the front and in the back here as well. You've also got the sharp crease that runs right from the crease of the front hood all the way back to the rear. And you've also got this beautiful piece of glass right there. That's not even a panoramic piece of glass. That's just the roof right there, that piece of glass. And then it's got this kind of like squared off, blunted kind of rear end that just kind of shears down flat like that. But it looks cool when you're looking at it head on from the back. Some nice designs to it. You got this nice light bar running across the side from either side of the tail lights, and some interesting textures with the different colors, plastics with the body paint, and those types of things. Looking at it from the front, I think Polestar did a great job with these headlight designs. These look super cool. LED, of course. And then you've got this really interesting pattern in the front grille right here. Very thick and three-dimensional when you look at it right here. And then here is the Polestar logo. Very clever. Now, this does not house an engine per se. That is storage space. And there's storage space in the back as well. You get 15.5 feet overall. Most of it is in the back, but there is some in the front. So why don't we take a look inside and show you in a little bit more detail. So to save a little time, I opened both the front and back trunks up ahead of time, but I will quickly show you how it's done. It does open like it would a hood. The latch is right here. Pull on that. It clicks open, and then you find this yellow tab right here. And then this is what you got. A nice little happy chunk of space. It's not big. I'm not even sure you could fit a carry-on bag in there, but you can definitely fit things, a big purse maybe, and there's other bits right here as well. And then underneath this is some first aid things you need, tow hook and triangle warning, things like that. You also have windshield washer fluid container and those types of things. Underneath that is the electric motor that is doing the work. But in back, of course, is where the bulk of your storage is. This is where 14.3 of the 15.5 cubic feet are. And there are some clever little features here. Okay, you've got this nice little privacy panel, those types of things. But if you want to separate your luggage and keep it from moving around so much, this pops up and kind of springs into place right there to give you a divider, which is kind of cool. And then you can lift this whole thing up and have even more space down low, which is nice. And then as you can see, the seats are split 40-60 right there. So you have more space as well. And again, this is ultimately a hatchback right there. And it's easy enough to close. To open this, by the way, there's a button inside the car and there's a button on the key fob as well. All right, let's move to the back. Now this is not a very big car, but space back here is pretty darn decent. You've got good knee room. I'd say I have about 4 inches here, and I am 5'11" or 181 centimeters tall. The seat bottoms are a little bit on the low side, but it's not bad. And I've actually got a pleasant amount of headroom considering size of this. And it's also very cool. Have this huge piece of glass right here. Plus this is a neat little clever bit right there, the Polestar logo hanging out. Also, you do have vents, heated seats back here. That's part of the plus package. and some charging right here as well, and that is AC power. That's kind of cool. If you do not have 3 people back here, what do you get? Cup holders, of course. And you know, it's a very generally comfortable interior to sit in. Moving to the front. Okay, to start, of course, we have the usual power windows, power side view mirror adjustment, power locks, seat memory. Looking down at seat adjustments, pretty usual, fore, aft, seat back, and then some lumbar adjust as well. Now, this is a pretty high center console, so you do have a little bit of extra space down here, and then this is the rear trunk release right here. Steering wheel has some buttons right here. Here's cruise control and some other bits right here to control this 12.3 inch fully digital instrument cluster screen right here. And as you can see, I've got 150 miles of range and 50% battery life left. I've driven quite a bit already. Also, you have an 11.15 inch portrait setup, iPad-esque kind of screen right here. And this is a really clever bit of stuff right here, because this is a Google operating system. So it works really, really well, to put it bluntly. And I'm going to skip right to my favorite part, and that is the vehicle setup. Look at this. Steering feel, light, standard, firm. Stability control, sport mode or regular. One pedal drive, off, low, or standard. Creep, on or off. Very, very cool. Then you can go to the assist part of things. Driver support, lane keeping aid, driver aid, road sign information, and on and on and on. So you have that type of information, really easy to see in the nice display. Charging, that just gives me a different version of the information I had up there. 57% battery life, 150 miles of range, and this goes into how many amperage you want, things like that. So if you're actually plugged in, that gives you some more options as well. Okay, and then over here, car status, locking, interior lights, exterior lights, mirrors, wipers. So you just have a lot of different options here, and then you can choose to power off the vehicle if you want. But why do that? We're in here, it's fun. Also, here's an example of the different, just like Google access you have. Google Maps, that's a huge thing. Look at that. That's real nice to have right in your car, built into your car natively. Plus, if you're the owner of the car, you can set up a profile and do all kinds of custom bits right there. Okay, moving on. Here is your play and volume knob, hazard lights, defrosters, and here's your Prindle right here. And this is a nice little clever bit to have the Polestar logo right there. Also, if I want to change the climate control, I just scroll up here, and then I have access to my climate control settings, and that gives me a different viewpoint right here as well. But I can just go here, temperature, all those types of things, heated seat and heated steering wheel. That's nice to have. It's a couple clicks away. It's not quite as intuitive as just having a button in front of you, but as far as these tablet screens go, it works really, really well. And currently set to auto, but you can also manually adjust the fan, and you have these types of adjustments here as well. There's a ton we could get into just with this operating system. I'm just scratching at the surface. One other thing I wanted to point out, I never started this car. I just kind of got in and the car just started working. All I have to do to get moving, as you can see, it says ready. There's no on button, there's no start stop button, no nothing. I just put the car in drive, my foot's on the brake, and that's it. Now we're moving. Pretty crazy that all you need to do is have the key on you and the car will basically work automatically. And I'm going to put it in park now. The car will also stop automatically. So all I'm doing, everything's on, I'm just opening the door. And that's it. A little spooky, I'll be honest, but also pretty darn clever. So all these little gadgets are fun and neat, but we should really see how it drives. Let's go for a drive. Hi everybody. Well, it's that time of year again in Michigan, so I've got my gloves on to keep my hands nice and warm, and I am very happily driving a 2022 Polestar 2, which is, depending on how you look at it, the company's second or the second version of the company's first full EV vehicle, as this is a single motor front wheel drive Polestar 2 as opposed to the 2-motor all-wheel drive car which came out last year. That means I've got 231 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque going to the front wheels instead of 408 horsepower going to all 4 wheels. And that makes this car quick, but not heart-poundingly fast. The all-wheel drive Polestar 2, I did drive that last year. That thing scoots. That thing has real muscle behind it. This loses some of that gusto, of course. I mean, it's not much more than 50% of the power, and it goes to the front, not the rear axle. But it's still plenty to get you moving, and you still have electric motor response and electric motor torque way down low to give you plenty of pull and good feel of speed right away. So it is by no means slow, but it is no longer quick like the other car. Now, there are advantages to that, of course, because this still does get the 78 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery pack, which is good for, in this car, 270 miles of range. And that beats the all-wheel drive car by more than 20 miles, and it's pretty obvious why. It only has 1 motor to spin instead of 2, and obviously it only has the weight of 1 motor to carry and drivetrain to carry instead of 2. So those things together gives you a driving range that starts feeling pretty comfortable. You know, it is in the mid 40s in Michigan right now, and when I started the day, it was in the 30s, and I still had well over 200 miles of range, and it's only dropped down to 180 so far. So it's delivering mileage as I expected it to in this much cooler weather. No, this isn't winter weather yet, but this is where people start getting nervous, and so far I've got no reason to be nervous. I've driven around 75 miles in total, and I've so far beaten my expectations for the use of battery. Anyway, put these things together: 231 horsepower, 243 pound-feet of torque, 78 kilowatt hour battery pack, front wheel drive. It is time for an acceleration test, and I'm slowing down. Let me show you how this thing accelerates. Briefly coming to a stop. There's no brake torquing to do because there's no torque converter or anything like that. So anyway, take my foot off the brake, full throttle, here we go. And we're moving. Yeah, I mean, it's totally solid. It's not heart pounding like I said, but it's a little bit slow to get moving. You don't have that initial jerk back in the seat that some of the dual motor and more powerful electric vehicles can provide. Porsche Taycan is an excellent example of that, and even the dual motor Polestar 2 is pretty darn impressive when it comes to straight line accelerating. You don't get that, but you're definitely competitive with a Nissan Leaf, Chevy Bolt, those categories of cars. And in terms of, normal driving circumstances, you're never wanting for power. It's always adequate or more than adequate. And the power you do have is so easily accessible because you always have extremely consistent, extremely fast accelerator response. Can't really call it throttle response, there's no throttle. And that torque is pretty much always there. It is good, reliable, solid, durable power. And in virtually all driving circumstances, you're not going to be wanting for power. You're going to feel like you have plenty, and that includes on the interstate as well. I drove this on the interstate for a little while, and it felt 100% at home. And even battery discharge was nice and slow as I was on the interstate. So all very pleasing. And there's some other real advantages to having an EV. Polestar does a really good job of maximizing those advantages. This is a very clever car to be in, and for a lot of reasons. First of all, I just love how easy it is to adjust some fundamental things about this car. I go to the vehicle, and I can go to drive, and right there, I can change between light, standard, and firm steering feel. I have it on firm steering feel because I like less assistance generally. And you can also adjust off, low, or standard one-pedal driving, and that's basically how much automatic battery generation you get when you lift off the accelerator. And I really like one pedal driving. I think that's an advantage of EVs, and might as well take full advantage of it. Your right foot almost never has to touch the brake because there's this neutral point in the accelerator, around 5 to 10% apply, that is effectively idle. And then when you lift less than that, you start slowing down. So you've got this real nice analog flow you can develop with your right foot that dictates all speeding up and slowing down in the car. It's a fun little trick to master. And you can also turn on and off creep. And creep is when the car just starts slowly idling along as the torque converter slowly engages with the transmission. So if you have an automatic transmission and it starts moving a little bit on idle, that's the torque converter engaging with the engine a little bit and transferring some of that torque to the wheels. So if you like that feeling, you can turn that on here and it mimics that. But that's ultimately a false thing. It's like a gimmick. That's not real in EVs. You don't have to do that. So I leave it off. I prefer it that way. And then also you do have a sport mode for stability control if you want it. And having a sport mode in stability control is justifiable here. Now, this is not the most engaging car I've ever driven, but it is fully competent at what it does. And again, you do have some nice advantages. You do have really nice accelerator response, and you have a well-tuned strut suspension up front, multi-link suspension in back. Plus, the battery pack does make this car heavy, but it also gives it a very low center of gravity. Even though the ride is totally compliant when you go over bumpy roads and some undulations, it also has good body control, and it doesn't lean over too much in the corners because the center of gravity is so low. And the stock 245 section width Michelin tires do grip the road pretty darn well. It's not quite as linear and progressive as the best cars out there, and not the most engaging, but it's far from the least as well. You can have a lot of fun in this car if you want. And this car does have some pretty unique attributes. For example, this car has a fully vegan interior. That means no animal products were used in assembling this thing. The most obvious one is there's obviously no leather in here, but all the other bits, all the plastics and all the glues and everything else, no animal products were used in making any of that stuff. Ironically enough, you can option this car to have a Napa leather interior, but stock, it is a vegan interior. Also, this has the Google operating system. So above and beyond just having Android Auto connectivity, this is a full Google setup. And it also has Google Voice and some other systems from Google that just operate really well. It's just super easy to use this system. It functions very well. With all that said, of course it pairs with Android Auto. It does also pair with Apple CarPlay, and all those systems also work just fine. But this is the first system I've used in a long time where I really haven't felt the need to connect Apple CarPlay, because using the native system works so well and intuitively. Put it all together, and more than anything, what this car does is ease my mind about the future of cars. This thing is fun, it's competent, it's efficient, it's user-friendly, and it's enjoyable to drive. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you are still watching, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like this video and subscribe to my channel. Those things really do help me out a lot. Okay, goodbye. Wing! It's quick. It is quick.